Boom, 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 boom. Good day, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation 115. As always, I'm going to start us off with a tune.
Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captives need, to wait in heavy harness on flooded folk and wild. Your new God sullen peoples have devil and have child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threats of terror and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times made plain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace. Fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, what's love that Eden for thee? Bring all your hopes to Lord. Take up the white man's burden, not tawdry rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The ports ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden and reap his old reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye good. The cry of those ye human are slowly towards the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, our loved Egyptian night? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent, sullen people shall weigh your gods and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days, the lightly proffered laurel, the easy young grudge praise. Come thou to search your manhood through all of thankless years. Go age with dear bought wisdom, the judgment joy of years. Take off the white man's burden through all of thankless years.
Okay, and that was, of course, the excellent Chris Gard. Please go and check out his YouTube channel. He's got some great music on there. How are we going this evening, gents?
Yeah, good.
Same old, same old.
Yeah, not too bad, thanks.
Mitch, you always kill me. Adam, you haven't been on for a week or so because you were out and having fun. Did you have a first subject you wanted to bring up?
No, I have not. I've been in radio silence for a week, but a lot has gone on.
Yeah.
I mean, what's some of the things that's hit? We've had what seems to be a bit of an Overton shift. A lot of people have been commenting. I mean, you wouldn't have seen this because I know you're not on Twitter, but a lot of people have been commenting on this sort of these videos that are like that show sort of sometimes quite graphic scenes of like black on white violence. And there's this curious case that a lot of people are saying that they're seeing a lot of them, even like, you know, quite normative people are just seeing tons and tons of this stuff
On Twitter?
Yeah, some people are saying they're seeing it on other platforms as well, but it is mainly on Twitter, I think.
I've been seeing on Facebook.
Mm.
I've been seeing on Facebook, like I saw one the other day, and I think it was on I can't remember what it's called, like Fight Club, something like a Facebook page where that documents just people having fights in the streets. And I've been noticing that there was one going round of a child in the stairwell, and he was a white English child, and he was surrounded by like black teenagers threatening him and stuff. That's the one I've seen been going around quite a lot recently.
Yeah, and it's kind of weird because it's like, well, I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? It's like algorithmically, why is this happening? You know, is it? I mean, if it's happening on multiple platforms, it can't just be that, you know, Elon Musk's team have gone for like a neutral approach. But I also think this isn't explained by like the containment hypothesis either. Like there's something going on here that's I haven't been able to wrap my head around. I've been thinking about it for a couple of days, but I can't really square anything. I have no idea.
I mean, it could be, because I've been thinking of it as well. I mean, it could be a way of. I mean, I don't know the trouble is the population doesn't really need to be scared of like black people, because the majority of people in the country worship the ground that they walk on.
I think that might be a bit of an exaggeration. Anyway.
I don't know. I went up to I went up to Bristol the other day, and I could tell you it definitely. I mean, blackpilling journey. So when you go up there, but there's also a part of me that thinks that if there's going to, I think the constant pushing of look how violent black people are, look how violent black people are, it may be a way in the UK, for the UK example, because Labour in this country have been, and Tony Blair has been like pushing the tough on crime, tough on the cause of crime, and so this could be like a way of, you know, the left outflanking the right on crime, and we're going to lock all these violent black thugs up, sort of stuff.
I did wonder that, but the thing is that Keir Starmer hasn't really been pushing that angle, so it's kind of like they've been left out of the loop in some way.
Yeah, I can't see Keir Starmer doing that either. I mean, wasn't he even a prosecutor at one stage?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this might be for like the elections, when we have the election build up and everything, but I don't know, because someone says, well, if there's any fear in black people, there's fear because if a white person in America, for example, where a lot of these videos come from, if they challenge a black person, they'll more likely be lambasted as racist. There are laws in place to make sure that they would definitely go down if they try to retaliate or even defend themselves in these states like New York and California, where a lot of the cases are, especially New York, there's a lot of videos coming out from there.
I watched a video AI last week, which I put up in the Discord, and I know Atman commented on as well as other people. And this was a young white family, in their 20s, I guess, with a little white baby, and there was this black dude who wasn't violent to them, but he spent 10, 15 minutes slagging off the white baby and how there shouldn't be any white babies, etc. Now, if I'd have been that dad, I would have hit him. I've got to say, I would have stood up and I would have hit him. I would have warned him first. I would have said, look, fuck off, mate, But after that, I would have just punched him. I would have knocked him down.
Yeah.
And because the white dad didn't do that, I don't understand how his wife's ever going to respect him, really. To be honest, I really don't, because women are not into blokes not doing anything in that sort of a situation. And obviously no one else came up and helped him. I mean, if that had been a single white woman with her baby and I didn't know her, I would have had to have intervened. I'm sorry, I just would have done.
The thing is, though, is that the state and the authorities would brutalize you for it.
Yeah,
and
probably it would have been worth it.
I mean, the thing is, if I stepped in, I know I probably couldn't help myself with not going full American History X on him. So I know I can't trust myself.
I would have just punched him really, really hard in the nose and knocked him over. That's what I would have done.
It's a big
target. I mean, I know I
Yeah.
said in the Discord that I would then have stomped on his head, but I probably wouldn't have done that because he wasn't actually being wild. But I would certainly have knocked him over.
Yeah, you would knocked him over, dragged him to the platform edge, and say, "Put your fucking mouth on the curve."
I'm not that uncivilized. You got to do violence to me first before I get that bad. But yeah, it's. Davey 1602 in the chat says I would have got my head kicked in by half the train. I don't think I would have done, to be honest.
Well,
then I'm 6'2" and pretty ugly. I'm 6'2" and pretty ugly, guys.
There was actually a video from a few years back in London of a guy on a train, a white guy, and he is sort of getting the absolute shit smashed out of him by like 3 black youths, and these white women on the train are just like cheering him on. So
I can well believe that. That doesn't surprise me in the least degree. But these people
cheering on the black people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me at all. But then you know, women have always been the same. They don't really like violence very much. They're no good at it, despite what Hollywood would try and tell you. Whereas the lefty soy boys, unless they outnumber you about 25-1, won't come near you.
But the thing is, like, there was a story from America not even that long ago, like literally just maybe a month or two ago, of a girl who was she was kind of like racially bullied. It was kind of part racial, part not, and she committed suicide. And her father was basically sort of like hounded by the press to like make anti-racism statements, and like they were going like, "Was your daughter a racist?" And like, you know, typical sort of scum journalist stuff. And
I just laugh if someone calls me a racist.
Yeah, I know, but the problem is you'd be in prison, and it would be your missus and your kid that's got to put up with that stuff on the outside.
I don't know.
The thing is as well, like this goes into like my darker theory of why like these videos might be present, which I'm not sure this is true, but it did sort of cross my mind, was that this is just part of some sort of humiliation thing, that they think the needle's gone far enough and that they can make that last push.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I mean, this victim culture that whites are being encouraged to accept.
Yeah, there is something else darker, and this was I think I saw it from like the Manosphere people on a thread a few weeks back, but they were talking about how in porn, a lot of the porn being pushed now is like black men on white women, particularly white gingers for some reason, white redheads, and like really over-indexing on like a lot of the porn sites and everything, and so I mean that could be like another like humiliation ritual as well, because as we know, mixed race couples are not, they're actually very, very rare.
Yep.
In reality, even in America, it's not that common. Even in integrated areas. So
Totally agree.
So I mean, I think there is like element humiliation, and also I do have my own version of this. So when I was, I think I mentioned it on this before, but when I was a young boy, we went up to London. Me and my parents went up to London. We were on this bus, and there's like double decker, and we were sitting on like the top floor of that, and there was this Caribbean woman who was, either high or drunk, and she kept on like staring at me, calling me like devil child and everything. So I mean, I'm aware of this, and the funny thing is, she was the first black person I ever met.
Good introduction.
So yeah,
Wow.
the first one I properly met. And so, as you can imagine, my life was sort of set on that on the path quite quickly.
God was being kind. He granted you the red pill early on.
Yes. Did you hear that, London? It didn't have to be this way.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I think the reason why a lot of black people are sort of chimping out, or I shouldn't use that word. A lot of black people are behaving in this way, is there is like this, especially in America, there is such entitlement, especially from what happened in 2020 and everything they got. A lot of the looters and rioters and violent thugs got away with during the George Floyd riots. That they know in these states, these Democrat states, they have free reign to do whatever.
Carte blanche.
Yeah,
Carte
pretty much.
blanche.
They know,
Yeah,
and the thing there is, they know that they can shout at white families, they can bully, they can. I mean, there was one case that was really horrific. I remember a few months ago, where this she was a fire warden or something, and she was just walking down the street, daylight in New York, and this black man came running out with a knife and just stabbed her repeatedly in the chest over and over again, and just walked off and killed her. And so when Scott Adams, because this sort of has all come about since Scott Adams, the cartoonist in America, basically came out with the statement of, if you're a white person in America, stay away from black people. And yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Adam said in chat they have the whip hand, you could say. Well, yeah, I mean, I remember actually looking at a Hope Not Hate report on Enoch Powell, like literally just like maybe 2 years ago, and they were really like going on about that point, which was something he said that he got from someone else. He wasn't even saying it like himself. He was quoting someone, but they were like, "Oh no, this is so wrong. Like, look, it's just preposterous." But they didn't quantify it, and like you can see it, like most people can. I remember, I mean, I even just picked up someone said months and months and months back, they said, oh, everywhere you hear white privilege, but everywhere you look, you see black privilege or something like that. And I just thought, oh, it's a funny, quite a cute observation.
Just remember back during, again, like mid 2020, the insane performative crap that was going on, even in this country, where you had like all these white fucking traitors taking the knee for black thugs,
including the cops, including the British police. Yes.
Yeah, including the cops. Yeah, and my workplace did it. I didn't do it because. Yeah, my workplace, all like my workplace did it, and
a British man should kneel for two things: and two things only, and that is God and the monarch. Nobody else and nothing else.
Yes.
Yeah, I tell a few too many spicy
I
jokes
mean-
at work. I don't think they'd get away with doing that.
I mean, the thing though is, it's like, I mean, what's led up to these events? I mean, I think it has made people like more race conscious. I don't want to say more racist, but more race conscious in some way. You know, it's definitely made me extremely race. Well, I've always been sort of race conscious, but it's just validated by, you know, validated what I've already suspected to be. But yeah.
I don't know. Look, I used to live in South Africa, and there were vastly more blacks than there were whites, and I never was afeared anywhere I went in South Africa. Never, 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 not once.
Well, that's kind of like there's something to be gleaned out of that, though, isn't there? Because in South Africa, the whites have for a long time learnt to live as a minority, and they sort of carry themselves in a sort of
Yes.
certain way that
Yes.
English people have been sort of bullied away from being, but they kind of need to learn to be again.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think that's entirely right. Like you can't just like if you lie down for this stuff, it will just get worse and worse. That's
But
all.
there's also, and this is something, another debate that sort of ties into what's been going on in right-wing circles, is every time you try and approach that issue and actually create a unifying force to push back against that, all it takes is one leftist to say to invoke AH, you know, mid-century man, and then all the, you know, that argument then falls flat, because then every like boomer, every sort of like midwit will then think, oh, I don't want to be, you know, Nazis bad, and we've seen this time and time again, that every time we see it with the immigration stuff, where, you know, mid-century German gets rolled out again, and
Yeah, but
and the boomers lap it up,
we've got to
yes.
step over the Second World War. You know, to
I
paraphrase Jonathan
thing is-
Bowden, we've got to step over the Second World War. I'm a 90s man, and I mean 1890s. So my opinion of this stuff is to do with the British Empire. It's got fuck all to do with Adolf Hitler.
but
Yeah,
this
when
is the
they
thing,
say, "Oh, you just want to go back to the 1950s," you just say, "Yeah, more like the 1450s." But go on.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
But this is the problem.
We should step over this World War II nonsense, which they use. I agree with you, AI, all the time, but it's a nonsense.
Oh, it really is, because it wasn't even true at the time it was taking place. It just absolutely was not true. But the problem is the generation that grew up in the wake of that, or generations, because it's not just boomers, it's even up until my generation. They are so encapsulated with the myth that I don't think that if that card is ever played, they just automatically fall for it. I don't know. I think it's going to take several generations after, you know, until it becomes a distant memory, that I think, you know, that sort of tactic would wear a bit. I don't see it happening anytime soon, because it's just I mean, I saw an article going about today about somewhere like in North, I think it was in North Wales or South Wales, somewhere in Wales, but PA, and you can say what you think about them and their optics and everything, but they were out leafleting, and you had like this, it was almost like a perfectly constructed civil rights style, yeah, let's take on the evil fascists, you know, and we're going to bring the communities together, and we're going to, you know, promote love and tolerance and all the great stuff that came out in the 60s, and it's just absolute horseshit. Absolute,
I agree. It's
nonsense.
absolute horseshit. Brian the Rebel in the chat makes a good point that leftists and Wignats both wish to tie any white identity to the Third Reich. And I'm sorry, look, I'm an Englishman and I'm a Brit and I've lived in South Africa and I now live in Australia. And I'm not a Nazi. I don't like Adolf babes at all. I've got a certain sympathy for Mussolini, but I don't like Adolf. And if you don't know,
No, I
there
mean,
is an enormous difference between Mussolini's fascism and Adolf Hitler's National Socialism.
I know, but even in your country, in the country that you're living in, Duke, I think Australia and New Zealand, you've had like trans-related protests, and
Yeah, we're going to
think-
talk about that in a bit, because I want to talk about that in a bit, but let's not do it now.
but I won't obviously go into, but even like the left there, that I've seen online them talk saying, oh, we're going to go out and we're going to stop these Nazis and everything. Everything is just a Nazi to them, and
Sure.
the trouble is, I think Nazis now just become a byword for evil. It's just become a word for an evil or someone I perceive to be
it's
evil.
because that's supposed to be the most evil there's ever been, even though Stalin killed vastly more people than Hitler ever did. But
did you guys see Sadiq Khan referred to people against the ULEZ charge as not as far right?
Yeah, yes, I did, and yeah. But this is the thing. It is a powerful mental tool, and there are two paths. Either you take the path of where someone says you're a Nazi, you just go, "Yeah, I am. I'm a German National Socialist. What are you going to do about it?" Or
from the 1930s or 40s, yeah.
Yes, I want the trains to I want the trains to run on time. I want to create clean industrial sectors. I want to build more motorways. What are you going to do about it? But or you take the option of either you just ignore it. The problem is though, I think it's one of those things that just can't be ignored at the moment, because even people on supposedly on our side will fall for it. And I like Carl, I like Sargon. I think he's his what he produces is really good, but even he doesn't fall for it, but he plays into the framing a bit too much as like Nazis being the ultimate evil.
Yes.
And
I always correct these people. Like, they'll say Antifa are Nazis. They're not. They're communists.
Exactly. They're anti-fascist. They're communists. And the thing there is, I know I don't get it with Carl, because he's a man of history. I mean, he knows the score, and I just don't know how he falls for it, because
he's come a long way since 2015.
Maybe it's the like residual liberalism still spewing around in his body.
I suspect so. Yes.
The thing is, though, Sargon's still. Yeah, go on. Sorry.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, I just final point. Everyone watching, you need to kill the liberal within you. You need to kill it
as much as you can.
Sorry,
sure.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I went to the Skildings event, right? And Sargon was the last speaker on the last day, and he was kind of like giving everyone a little telling off. It was like a headmaster, like coming in and sorting out the class, and because there have been a few spicy jokes over the course of the weekend that he didn't like, and he kept talking about how we had to like, I was trying to remember the exact framing, but he was essentially he has this argument he's been pushing for a while, where he's like, oh, you need to sort of judo throw all their own phrases back at them, like, oh yeah, we're an ethnic group too, so we also need all these protections and rights. And everyone was kind of like rolling their eyes, and it was like, yeah, really? I mean, these are like two sort of 2016 points, it's that we're past that now. Yeah, I think everyone on the right should be able to see that, when they sort of like coined the term like racism, right? It was a word for them. It was for them to use against us. And they were never going to let us sort of throw that back at them. And this is why when you see like these sort of boomer cons and they go, well, that's also racism. It's just racism against, the English or the whites, and a lefty just rolls their eyes and then employs it against you anyway, with state power and political backing and
they win.
Only white people can be racist.
Yeah, and then you have like ridiculous Twitter threads where it's just of oh no, this is what Nazism is. Oh no, this is what liberalism is. And
Yeah.
this is why I'm X. And then it's like, no, you're still a Nazi. And nothing is achieved in the dialogue.
Yeah.
I personally, and this is something I recommend you guys and everyone else watching, is if you're ever confronted on social media or an event, and someone says, okay, you're a Nazi and everything, blah, 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 instead of throwing back what they said on you, just say, no, we have the moral majority of the will of the population. Because if you say we have the moral majority, number one, you probably do have the moral majority, but also number two, it's non-falsifiable. No one can really determine if that is correct or not. And I mean that's actually a Tony Blair tactic, and it does work, and it will work. Because I've used it. I used it with the Wellington Project recently, and it does shut people down. Honestly, the people who come after you, because they can't really, because they say, well, they can't really come back with anything. They can say, or says who? And it says, well, we have the moral majority, and you just give them like stats of public opinion on immigration or something, which is always in public opinion on immigration has always been one-sided, and that's opposed.
I don't argue with leftists. I don't see the point, because they're not open to arguments. There ain't no great thing of ideas, as Sargon used to say it. It's just nonsense, because leftists are not interested in listening to anything.
I mean, it's not arguing though, because I'm not saying to argue. I'm just saying if you ever come across somebody, instead of saying nothing, just say, well, we have the moral majority, and then leave it at that.
If someone calls me a racist, I laugh at them these days. If someone calls me a fascist, I'll try and explain what Italian-style fascism was, which is not what most of them think at all. And if someone calls me a Nazi, I just say, no, I'm not, because I'm not. So, yeah.
Yeah, but the problem with that is that those people can wield power against you under that term. And that's why, I mean, I think AI is onto something, because you have to sort of diffuse that weapon. You can't just like there's a time for stepping over it, and then there's a time for understanding that this has actual power, and they could actually really hurt you with this.
I know. Look, I'm
tackling
talking
it in other ways.
Adam, I'm talking about, like, if I'm talking to someone in a private conversation at a pub or a bar or something,
Yeah.
I'm not talking about some great public debate, because I don't do those.
Yeah, but I mean, you can get these accusations thrown at you in the workplace and all sorts. So,
well, I can't, but yeah, I see that many people can. But look, I'm semi-retired, and such work as I do is entirely self-employed. So, like, I'm not subject to that, and I'm lucky because of that, obviously. But yeah, but recently I have had an example of exactly that. Unfortunately, it's been from a misinformed person who hasn't done enough research. But I was dealing with that yesterday, and I'm not going to say any more about it. But this was someone going after my son, who is an officer in the Royal Navy. But they've got the wrong person, I'm happy to say.
Oh, well, they weren't trying to, connected to your online stuff like this?
Yes.
Oh, right. Fucking hell.
Yeah, indeed. I was a bit fucked off, to tell you the truth. I spent several hours last evening dealing with it.
I say, if you want, we could. I was going to say, should have mentioned. I might have toned it down a bit.
No, look, I mean, don't worry about it. This person's even got the wrong officer, so that's fine.
You should name and shame.
No, I might actually do that in due course, right. But I don't need to at the moment. And I've been telling my son. I've been telling my son he should leave for some time. So.
Is this the British Navy or the Australian?
No, Royal Navy. My son's serving in the Royal Navy.
Oh, it's the Royal. It's the Royal Navy. Yeah.
The Australian Navy would probably be much worse because it's far smaller. But
Actually,
it's not far smaller, but it is a lot smaller. But But yeah, no, I didn't want to talk about this, to be honest. But I
Right,
have been
yeah.
dealing with
No,
it.
that's
I
fine. That's
think I'm dealing with it fairly successfully, actually. But anyway, Mitch.
Yeah.
Sorry, Adam, did you have anything else to add to your first point?
No, I'm good.
Mitch, did you have something you wanted to bring up?
I think like the past few days have been interesting in terms of like what's happening outside the UK. You got for one, you got this whole Russian-China meeting where by the end of it, Russians are saying any deals to be made with Russia are to be done in either yuan or rubles. So that might be the beginning of something. Then there's a funny story of all these Western military guys who went over to Ukraine, and the New York Times have actually done an article to say, yeah, all of these guys are grifters, basically, or they're all just like flinging crap at one another of intrigues about the military units, like international legions and whatnot. And then there's the case of Syria, where there are like military bases there on the US side that are getting missile strikes because, yeah, it looks like the Syrians and Iranians have just gotten tired with America just endlessly drone striking them all the damn time at this point.
And you were saying on the Discord that these strikes against the US bases caused casualties. Did they? I don't know. I haven't seen anything about it yet.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything confirmed. It's just said 4 military bases that are in Syria for the US because they're all situated next to oil fields because the Americans are there to they're there to poach like 80% of Syria's oil production that's there, and technically they're there to prevent ISIS from ever coming back, but we all know what that really entails.
I thought the CIA and also the British MI6 partially funded ISIS, from what I can work out. But all right.
Yeah, it's not just that. I mean, the Russians did far more to help the Syrians defeat ISIS to begin with. Like,
100%.
It's like that city called Palmyra, I think it's called, which is has a lot of Roman ruins. ISIS
very famous. It used to be an ancient city. It's very famous. Yes.
Yeah.
It was a capital. I was going to say it dates back even before Rome. It's like Assyrian sort of time as well.
And during the Roman era, at one stage, it was the headquarters of a breakaway bit of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, Zenobia.
That's the one.
Queen
Zenobia.
And it was called the historians refer it as the Palmyrian Empire or the Palmyrian state.
And when she got defeated, she was paraded through Rome in golden chains. But by then, the Romans had become a bit more civilized, and they didn't strangle her. They actually gave her a pretty cushy retirement in a villa somewhere outside Rome.
Absolute decline, moral degeneracy. They should have strangled her there,
Oh, I don't know. I'm not really in favor of strangling chicks, but anyway, yeah. But no, but yeah. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the Roman Empire and like ancient Roman history and stuff like that because I think it's central to the story of the West.
Yeah. Like the thing about like that city of Palmyra, it's like ISIS were wanting to blow up everything there. However, the Syrian army, supported by Russian airstrikes, and also Russian engineers demining the whole place, practically saved it. So
yeah. The Russians even made a not bad film about it that I watched, but was totally ruined by terrible dubbing.
It's also worth noting that a lot of the Syrian soldiers that were involved in its recapture were Christian. That was another thing that was because it obviously being a Roman thing, there were several. I think there were several like churches and monasteries in the area and everything. And I remember seeing footage of like these Syrian forces with like wearing the sort of Orthodox cross and everything. So there was that was like another important thing. So I mean, again, the Christian population of Syria, I think it's about 20%. It's quite high actually.
Yeah, there's still a substantial Christian population in many Middle Eastern countries. Syria, as you rightly say, AI, but also Lebanon has a lot of Christians.
Iraq had
Iraq has some. Yeah,
well, Iraq had like 2 million when Saddam was there. Doesn't have 2 million now though.
what a surprise!
Yeah,
Funny
Thanks,
how
Tony Blair.
everywhere the sort of American empire touches, the Christian populations just get absolutely wiped out.
Funny that.
I say, look at
Especially
Ukraine
when-
now.
Yeah, especially when you factor in most Christian communities in the Middle East, they survived all manner of caliphates and Ottomans, only to get done over by the gay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they even survived the Mongols. I mean, in some cases.
Yeah, I know. Look,
yeah.
I don't disagree with any of this. I know this is all true. I mean, I actually went out with a chick in Australia who was a Lebanese Christian girl and a former air hostess. Very cute. And yeah, she was really nice, but she was absolutely a Christian.
Did she turn you down?
But no, I went out with her, mate, quite a while.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So she wasn't like, "Oh, you're filth, and get away from me."
Of course not. I'm a moderately handsome chap. But yeah. No, actually, I was very keen on her. She was cute as all hell, but yeah. But I went out with that girl for quite a while. And like I say, Lebanese girl, but absolutely a Christian.
Yeah. So, on like the topic of like these airstrikes, it got because apparently there's a theory going around that the Americans struck some Iranian base or some in eastern Syria because they did it as a sort of FU message to both Iran and Russia in the area, given that because they reckon it's also to stretch out the Russians because generally there's a fear that Russia might be supplying Iran with nuclear hardware to help the nuclear program along. So that's what's got the Americans all crapping their pants, so to speak. Yeah.
And what do you think about this supposed Ukrainian spring offensive, Mitch? Because, like, to me, it looks like bullshit, to be honest. But you know,
I mean, I keep hearing different things about it. We don't even know where it's going to be, so I can't.
But they keep announcing it. They keep announcing it, which doesn't seem like very sensible military policy to me.
So, is this a Ukraine offensive against Russia or Russia against Ukraine?
No, this is supposed to be the Ukrainian spring offensive, which is going to cut off the Crimea, which I don't believe for 1 second, to be honest. But
yeah, if anything, I've just been focusing more on this New York Times story that just broke out that pretty much just said, "Oh yeah, all these Western volunteers are just all turned into be massive grifters." And we've all been shit-flinging against one another over the International Legion. Like you get this guy called James Vasquez, for example. He pretty much lied to the Ukrainian army, saying, "Yeah,
he was big total. He was a total con artist." Yes, I know about that one.
Was this one we were talking about a couple of episodes ago, where he switched sides or something? Because he was trying to get away from money laundering.
No. This was the guy who was like making loads of videos where he was supposedly destroying huge amounts of Russian military equipment, and probably he never ever went to the front line.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. If anything, like he got. So Reddit pretty much donated 3 million to this guy, and he just spent all the money. He spent all this money on hotels and Jack Daniels while drinking with Ukrainian elites.
Well, I mean, wasting plebit bucks is probably quite based, but
it's actually been shown before, like months and months ago now, that people looked at some of his videos and compared them to earlier videos, and showed that the ones he was filming were filmed like 6 months later in the same place.
Yeah.
So he was just a total con artist. Yeah, Adam is correct. I mean, I'm not a big Coach Red Bill fan, but Gonzalo Lira did actually, Coach Red Bill, did call him out last year about this by showing where, like, even to the thing of, like, transformer boxes on telegraph poles and all this kind of stuff, he just filmed in the same place as something that happened 3 months earlier, you know?
Yeah, I remember, I don't know if it was him, but I remember there was some American who was spreading the news that there was a like a Holocaust memorial in, was it Odessa, was destroyed deliberately by Russia, and there was big outrage online, and then like
Shit. The only people who would do that in Odessa would be the Ukrainians, because the Ukrainians have quite a lot of pretty genuine
no, 'cause
Nazis.
Well,
So,
well, but this is the thing, though. There was, I think, Coach Red Pill, or one of like the people in his sphere, actually went to the area, and it was like, no, the monument's still there. Nothing has happened. It was just total BS.
I just
by
don't see
some
the I just don't
Americans.
see the Russians doing that, seeing as the Russians claim they want to do a denazification of Ukraine. And the
Yeah.
funny thing is, here we have Western nations like Britain and America and Australia, etc., all supporting Ukraine, which has actual Nazi formations, who wear their badges and do the Roman salutes and all the rest of it. But we're supporting them because apparently Ukrainian Nazis are all right.
Well, the thing though is, and this is something that I've been looking at recently, and I put this out on Twitter, and I had the two usual knuckleheads who I won't mention, who decided to do like the absolute Ukrainian simps, and or Zelensky simps, I should say, more so than anything. And I was basically saying, America is trying to de-Christianize Ukraine, and or I say de-Orthodox, Ukraine. And there have been several articles where there's been saying, oh, priests and clergymen who are loyal or supporters of Russia are being removed, and you think to yourself on the surface,
well,
yeah, there's a war
absolutely happening. That is absolutely
yeah,
happening. I mean, but the
but
Ukrainians
no,
have done that
it's
already in the
yeah,
political sphere and in every other sphere. So now, why not religion as well?
hold on a sec, because on the surface you think like that. Okay, yes, like it's Russian-backed war. Okay, I can understand. I guess the Zelensky's perspective on that and everything, but it's actually not even that.
Zelensky. But anyway,
It's not. Hold on, it's not even that. It's not even that. These clergymen aren't necessarily Russian supporters. What they are doing is they are conducting services using Russian or a variation of Old Russian liturgy, which is the language that is the modern Orthodox is the Orthodox Church. Now, the arguments from them is it is the language and the writings that were passed down by the Kievan Rus, and that state predates modern Ukraine, Russia, and everything. Those are the people that have been targeted. It's not even like a Russia-Ukraine thing. It's not even political. It is deliberate. It is fundamentally deliberately attacking the native religion of that country and its people.
I totally agree with you, AI, but I don't think most people in the West are going to really fully understand it.
Well, no, of course I don't, because I found a tweet, because it's really started. It's funny because it started in right back at the start of the invasion, where Zelensky passed it was called a hate crime bill, believe it or not. But what was wrapped up in it was LGBT rights, hate crime against trannies and all that sort of stuff, and also the civil partnerships and gay marriage was also to be looked over as well. Part of the bill is going to be extended upon, and you had in like the chat, you had some Ukrainians. Well, what I think to be Ukrainians, I don't think they were Russian, but Ukrainians, saying about this. How is this in line with our values? This goes against God and everything. And these are like Ukrainians who live there, and you just had like these fat, fucking lefty women in in America
Iranian
just
freaks.
saying, oh who just saying this is separations of church and state and everything, and this is about the separations of church and state. There are other religions out there, you intolerant people, and it's like, you know, this is the thing, the West, and then particularly Americans, just impose the apps is the imposing values onto another country. it is I don't think any colonial power has had that level of just like cultural domination that America possesses. I just don't think there's ever been a case like this.
No, I mean, even if you go back to like the Yugoslav conflict, you know, the evidence one way or the other was very thin on the ground, but the Americans just took the side of, you could say, the Muslim factions.
100%.
And that was based on
100%. They did.
Yeah, and there was other things at play, of course. You know, like it was a Russia sort of East versus West conflict and stuff like that. But yeah, it does always seem to go that one way with them.
Always.
And
Yeah.
And there was a monastery. I think there was a monastery. There's been now. I know it's been going on before, but there was like this monastery, which is again dates back to the Kievan Rus Foundation, and the clergymen there who all perform liturgy in the Russian rite, in the Russian language, have all been expelled. You know, so I don't think it's still open. But they've been expelled, or they've been told to expel. I don't know if they've actually left.
Yeah,
But,
no, they have. Look, I've got our answer, Jules Roy, who I often argue with in chats. He's a strange French dude, I believe. The Durana clowns, the English guy Mercurius, strikes me as a not so secret leftist.
I agree.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and yes, he is. He's a full-on leftist. And I don't like him at all. The other dude is actually much better. But yeah, the dude in England is he's a leftist. I've got no argument with that at all. But I also
he seems a bit like George Galloway. He seems a bit like George Galloway.
I don't think he's even like George Galloway. I don't think he's as independent-minded as Galloway, to be honest. He's just a leftist. Ex-Fed. Jules Roy, Mercurius isn't the only one who spent the past month saying Bakhmut has fallen, right, Dukey? Bakhmut has 70% fallen, my guy. Honestly, it just has. I don't know, like, how many military maps you need to see, even from the Ukraine side, to work that out.
Have they actually got it now? Because I know it's taken them a long time.
They're very, very nearly there. They are very, very nearly there.
So because I'm a bit more wary of this stuff than you are. But what's the advantage to that? Is it the geographic location? Is that
if they take Bakhmut, they're going to end up surrounding quite a lot of Ukrainian forces, and once they're surrounded, they're fucked.
So it's like it's just a convenient place for an encirclement, basically.
Well, there's that, but there's also the Ukrainian lines of defense, which, bear in mind, they've been preparing since 2014. If the Russians take Bakhmut, there's going to be a much less prepared defense line beyond it. Which will not hold the enemy back, won't hold the Russians back as much as Bakhmut did. And if the Russians are lucky, they'll capture quite a lot of Ukrainian forces in Bakhmut. I mean, look, I don't care what anyone says. There's still no sign whatsoever of Ukraine not losing this war. Anyone who thinks Ukraine's going to win, in my opinion, is a moron.
But like. I mean, essentially, what's taken Russia so long on this one town? This
you've got town. All right, you got to remember a couple of things here, Adam. This is like the late winter and early spring in all parts of Ukraine and Russia. You have this like period where there's so much rain that everything turns to mud.
Yeah.
So you can't use vehicles much off.
Is this what they call Rasputitsa?
Yeah. And you can't use military vehicles, particularly like modern military vehicles, which weigh anything from 30 to 70 tons, off a tarmac road. And the tarmac roads are really heavily targeted with artillery and anti-tank weapons and all the rest of it. So there's a limit to what you can do. So you have what the Russians have been doing is incrementally surrounding this place with infantry assaults, with armored vehicle support where they could do it, which is not many places. And it's going to take a while. I think we've got to the stage now where a lot of infantry anti-tank weapons can stop tanks from doing big breakthroughs where there are quite a lot of them and they have good defensive positions. Doesn't mean tanks are obsolete. Anyone who tells you that's a moron. But it does mean that we're much more where the world was in, say, 1914, where infantry couldn't attack other infantry very easily because of artillery and machine guns, as well as like infantry rifles. And I think we're somewhere close to that at the moment. No Western army, not the Americans, not the British, not the Australians, nobody has fought the kind of war that the Russians are fighting in Ukraine, where you have heavy enemy artillery fire coming on you. No Western soldier has ever faced that since World War II.
And it has resulted back to trench warfare as well.
Yeah, for sure. Always does, because like if you can't move in the open, then you dig in. That's always what's going to happen. But the Russians are winning; they're not losing. There is almost no Ukrainian air power these days, and their artillery is outmatched. So in the end, I think the Russians are going to win, and also the Russians have to win, because if they don't, like, Russia's finished as a nation.
I mean, the one thing I've always kind of wanted to know, I suppose, is what Russian manufacturing looks like, because they seem to have been going for a while with very little issues in terms of supply, from what I can gather.
Yeah.
And I know they probably have a shit ton of stuff backed up, but like, this has been going on for a while now. I would have thought that if they had any sort of supply chain issues, we would have started to see stuff now, but I have no idea, to be honest. No idea at all.
It doesn't look to me that the Russians are running out of munitions. It does look to me that the Ukrainians can't even support the guns they've already got.
I remember seeing on YouTube and Twitter these clips from GB News at the time of or during the early start of the invasion, and you had Russian military is going to run out of ammunition, in a matter of weeks. It's going to be. I remember it was 10 weeks, and then the Russian military is just going to collapse because they won't be able. Putin won't be able to pay them, and it's just going to all collapse. And these were not just rando journalists. These were meant to be ex-military, military experts, that sort of stuff. And of course, that hasn't happened at all. And
look, I've got to answer Jules. We're in the chat here, guys. Where is Russian air power? Well, it is basically continually degrading the Ukrainian electricity grid, apart from anything else. Look, 3/4 of Ukraine has no electricity, but who cares about that, right?
I mean, last I heard, the Russians were dropping guided bombs north of Avdiivka, so it looks like in some areas the air defense has deteriorated, while in others it's the complete opposite. So it looks like those S-300s that the Ukrainians had at the start of the war have begun to dry up. Aside from landing in people's houses or in fields in Belarus and in Poland. Yeah, it looks like the air defense supply is drying up for Ukraine. And the Western stuff, well, the West doesn't manufacture enough. You've got the EU saying in the space of the next few years, they're going to manufacture 1 million artillery shells for Ukraine. And it's
that's bullshit, but it's bullshit anyway. But
how many are they actually going through over there, though?
Oh, they're going through like 200,000 a day or something, but I mean, or 20,000 a day. But look, they can't. The Western manufacturers are not capable of keeping up with it. Ex-Fed says everyone says the ghost of Kiev was fake, but why don't the Russians fly over the capital? Well, why would the Russians fly over the capital when they can launch standoff missiles from like 200 miles away? Like, that wouldn't make a lot of sense, would it? To fly over the capital when you can launch off standoff missile, which is what they do.
I mean, for all we know, they may do, and it's just not reported in the West. I don't know.
I very much doubt they do, because why would they need to? Like, if you don't have to, everything these days is beyond visual range, or a lot of, like, in the air, a lot of it is beyond visual range. So, like, you launch missiles from a position where you can't be hit by the enemy SAMs, and that's perfectly sensible. But like, the Ukrainians have no air power at all. Like, they may have a few helicopters left, but I don't think they've got a fighter jet between them.
I said the Ghost of Kiev as well, if I remember correctly, it was like a Armor 3 mod.
It was a total fake nonsense. It was total.
And I knew it was the Armor 3 mod, but it was a mod because I have that very mod, so I recognised it immediately.
Yeah,
so,
it was crap. I still think Russia is winning and will win. And I hope they win, to be honest, because I don't support either senile Joe Biden or Indian banker Rishi Sunak, neither of whom represent Britain or America.
I think it's worth saying as well, because people do kind of get hung up on this point. I don't really have a dog in the fight, and I'm sure no one else here feels they really do either. But I just want to see the Yanks take a L. I don't think Putin's base. I don't think Russia's like particularly well.
Adam and I want the Yanks to take a hit, and I also want Sunak to take a hit.
That's basically as far as my interest in it goes, to be honest.
Yep. Same.
I will say that the only thing that if you want America to lose, there's always a high chance, because America hasn't won a war since the World War II.
Pretty true.
They haven't won, and I don't count Iraq as a win, because it's not a win, is it? Really?
Well, it wasn't. Afghanistan certainly wasn't.
No, exactly. So there is a high chance America and the West will lose, because I don't think they're capable of winning anything. But there is also a downside, because if the West wins and Putin is ousted and Ukraine is restored and everything else, that life for the right in each country probably wouldn't change that much. But if they lose and Russia wins, the only thing is they may the focus, let's say, all the energy and focus from the establishment might turn on us, and then that might be another problem.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like you'll have like sort of the post World War II thing, where you get like the fellow travelers, which was anyone who was considered an evil appeaser before will kind of get shut out and pursued and denigrated and the rest of it.
Look, I think Russia's going to win. I don't think America is. I hope it doesn't turn into World War III, because if it does, that's going to kill all of us. Without a doubt, it will kill 95% of all of us if it turns into World War III. And like America and NATO end up fighting the Russians, that will go nuclear, and 95% of us will end up dead. And my worry is that people like senile Biden and Indian banker Sunak have so little invested in their supposed countries that they will do that without even a thought.
I mean, if that is the case, it would sort out the demographic question in Europe. I mean, that would sort of resolve it. On a side note,
Why am I suddenly pro-nuclear war? What's going on?
Yeah, I'm not
I'm not.
sure. I'm not sure I really am, to be honest, because some of this, the stuff we get about man-made climate change is almost all total bullshit. But nuclear winter stuff is not so much total bullshit. Which, strange to say, is the one they're willing to risk.
I mean, I don't know. I'm coming around to the idea of like the West wanting population decline. I'm still coming around to the idea in some funny way.
I just thought that they wanted us to all be like some sort of beige color.
Well, yeah, they
because that'd be much
ultimately
easier to control. That would be much
ultimately
easier to control.
Ultimately, that is how they want it, but their methods, I'm saying, I'm agreeing with. I'm sort of agreeing with in principle, but in my idea, it would just be white. We wouldn't be beige.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I totally agree with you. I just don't see it much. But look, I'm against World War III because it will be a nuclear war, and it's not a good plan because we'll nearly all die.
We're going to rebuild the ashes like a sort of
I don't know,
Fallout
man.
New Vegas.
I don't understand what's going to happen. I'm just sat here doing my best to fight back as far as I can. And people on my side do not include senile Biden or Indian banker Sunak or the Labour Prime Minister in Australia, Albanese, down and his Indigenous voice campaign. None of those people are on my side. They're all my enemies.
I mean, even if it kicked off and they nuked Britain, those poxy mecha signs will still be up in the Peak District, wouldn't they? So
probably.
You'd still have some stain of these people's corruption on the land.
Yeah, they'd all need to be pulled down eventually.
I don't. The British Christian Taliban would convert those into pro like Christian sort of thing, because that's the thing. If there was like a nuclear stuff, my hope would be that like the Christian Taliban would sort of rise from the ashes to rebuild society.
I wouldn't hold my breath, mate, but all right.
like hands-made tale sort of stuff.
I wouldn't hold my breath. I mean, then my best hope would be some base British soldiers who would sort things out a bit locally. But I wouldn't hold my breath about any sort of
even if they went like full like
Christian Taliban.
Even if they I mean, that or like Mosley. I wouldn't even mind if they went full like Mosley. I wouldn't really mind at that point. Just anything, but current.
Maybe. All right. AI, did you have a first subject you wanted to bring up? That we haven't already covered.
I was going to say we covered a bit, haven't we? I was going to say talk about France and what's been going on there, because last week I was here. I sort of wrote it off as like just usual French behavior, and there's nothing. I don't think there's any real importance to this, but there has been a few developments this week which I thought might be worth discussing. Since then, there's been larger protests. There's across France, and this is all around the raising of the retirement age. But it's sort of developed into beyond that, and what we've seen recently in like Bordeaux, the city, I think was it the city hall has been sort of burnt to the ground by protesters. There's been increasing sort of violence, and there was meant to be a state visit by the king, which has been postponed. So, and there's been quite interesting. The BBC have been criticising Macron as being out of touch. There's even been this little story going around that he had a like $10,000 watch, which he removed during a press conference because he realised he was wearing the wrong watch, and he put a more cheaper working man's watch on, or something like that.
Was it given to him by his very old lady wife?
Presumably, I don't think he can afford it.
I think she was his teacher when he was a child.
She was,
yeah.
Yeah, she was his teacher. Yeah. And
That's
what
the
was
French
his
way.
watch? I don't know. I don't know what his watch was. Was it 2,000? Someone said it was a £2,000 watch. The BBC said it was a 10,000. Okay, 2,000. Either way,
Lumber in the
there's-
chat says a £2,000 watch is not an expensive watch.
No,
mate.
it's not.
I don't know what watches you wear, mate, but okay, if you say so.
That's like my cheapest
I was a
watch.
mere infantry soldier, so there you go.
but there has been a lot of there's been a lot of sort of moves since then that have made that Macron is to be it does look like he is to be removed in some capacity, because his own side is sort of turning on him at this point. I will say this: the people who are the main opposition against him on the streets are the left. So, and
always the case in France, of course.
Yeah, so it probably won't come to anything. But it is interesting nonetheless that he's been facing really high levels of criticism, and you've seen from some people on the right, I say right, like Nick Fuentes and Richard Spencer.
Did he have
people
time
like that
to
who've
say
come out
anything in between going off with his
Apollo cult?
Yeah,
the Apollo cultists and everything. I mean, both of them have said, and I saw Nick Fuentes saying that, I support Macron because of the police. The police crackdown has been, quite brutal, to be honest.
and so Fuentes is supporting the French police.
He's supporting Macron because Macron is behaving like a dictator, and that's not just because of what the police are doing on the streets, but also what's going through Parliament, where Macron is effectively using executive powers, which is angered. That's sort of like what's caused a lot of
and does
anger.
anyone on the right still think that Nick Fuentes is really a right winger?
I think he's a racist liberal, like Spencer, to be honest.
Yeah, all right. I think probably, that seems reasonable. Yeah,
I think he's a racist liberal. I think he. I mean, someone just said in chat he's a fan of Stalin as well.
As soon as he got involved with the gay Greek Jewish black husband, what was his name?
Milo Yiannopoulos.
Yeah, Milo Yiannopoulos. So as soon as Fuentes got involved with that guy, all there should have been like a red flashing police light over his head going, "Don't trust this bloke." I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, because of course, and then the other thing that's happened today that I've seen is that, of course, Fuentes became a bit of a household name because he teamed up with Kanye, and Kanye had they decided, all three of them, to go on the Great Optics tour of the media circuit in America, and decided to name them, them quote unquote, on various shows, including Alex Jones, and it resulted in senators, congressmen in America to start debating about anti-Semitism and further hate speech restrictions on social media and everything. So they energized that debate due to their antics. And today I've seen Kanye West done a full retraction on Instagram or something, where he's basically said, after watching at 21 Jump Street or something. I now like Jewish people. I apologize for what I said, and he's done a complete backtrack on everything he's been saying over the last what he said several months ago.
So Kanye
and
is
mine,
a serious political figure, of course.
he is the most serious of them all. And,
Yeah.
and of course, remember, Milo dumped them right after Alex Jones. Milo dumped them.
Yeah, Milo used
then-
them in order to slag off Trump and then left them. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah,
But
he
I
left
mean,
them.
anything that Milo does, anyone who gets involved with Milo cannot be real on the right. They just can't. I'm sorry.
You know, well, there's a lot of things that have been that's been sort of around Milo for years now, which is which is basically suggested that if you get involved with him, you're gonna that it's more trouble than it's worth. So yeah, I mean, everyone who's had an interaction with him has usually done like videos coming out and saying what's gone
Described
wrong,
as
and
a con artist.
it's toxic. It's just toxic. Just absolutely like
He's a
endless
total
levels of
con
toxicity.
artist, and yet still people on the right get involved with him. Well, I say people on the right. I'm not at all sure that.
I say Adam. I remember because I met. I think I met Carl on his UKIP tour when he was standing, and I remember
didn't he
what
do
happened.
UKIP so many photos? Yeah.
Yeah, and Milo was involved with him, helping him, and it basically became, we're going to have much chaos. We're going to have like Antifa, and the funny thing was, Antifa and people that just like turned up everywhere he went. There are some places in the West Country where he was standing, major cities. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened, but it always stuck in my mind that somehow they always knew where he was going to be at any specific place and
Funny
time and
that.
everything. I knew it was all posted online,
That was
but
funny.
it was all posted
really.
on. Yeah, it was all posted online and everything, but yeah, just makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
But
I
at
mean,
the
look,
moment,
how can you support Nick Fuentes when he had a catboy boyfriend who he used to go shopping with? Now, I'm sorry. No straight white male goes shopping if he can avoid it, because it ain't things straight white men like. I'm not saying you won't go to a computer shop and buy a computer, or go to a shop and even buy a suit, but you won't go shopping, i.e. wandering around a mall and just, buying shit. And you certainly won't do it with another man.
yeah, I mean, I don't get him either, to be honest. I think he has an appeal for a lot of teenagers. He's definitely like if you watch him, he's definitely entertaining.
And gay.
I'll give
and
him that.
gay. And gay.
Yeah,
Almost certainly gay.
entertaining and gay. I mean, what he's done now, Fuentes, I noted is 'cause I wanted to do a follow up of like what Milo was up to. Milo's just gone dark. I don't know what he's up to. Kanye is like, I think he's shacked up with someone now. I saw that he's shacked up with a Jewish woman, but I don't know if that might just be that might
Jewish
just
woman.
be
Who would have
false.
believed it?
Yeah, that might be false information. I saw that just going on the grapevine. But he seems to be shacked up with some woman, and they're like they're sort of doing their own thing at the moment. And then Nick, he's been getting involved with like this girl, like feminine, girly group podcast where they talk about relationships and
the Pearl thing.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's been on that a few times, and so that's what he's been up to. And yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just ridiculous, isn't it?
Hmm.
I just think, like, Milo is beyond trusting by anyone on the right now. I mean, even if he wasn't gay with a former black husband and Jewish and all the rest of it, even leaving all that aside, he's just not trustable anymore. And then you have Nick Fuentes with his cowboy boyfriend, and who is pretty obviously now, I think, a gay bloke.
Yeah,
I
that's right.
find it hard to
again,
believe he's not gay. I'm sorry, I just do. I mean, how old is he? And a virgin? I don't know, like 23 or something now? Or isn't he about that?
I don't know. I think maybe early 20s. Yeah. I mean, going back to the story though with France. Yeah. Situation on the ground there for Macron is it's definitely more organised than the Yellow Vest. But the reason it's more organised is because the left are sort of leading the charge, and there are a lot of groups there that are
because it's
involved with
about
that.
retirement age and pensions, isn't it?
Well, yes, but it's also, I mean, it has become more about Macron. It is mainly about Macron, though, I think. A lot of the politicians in union and activist groups involved, and I've been watching a few interviews and such. It seems to be that it's more about Macron than anything else. I mean, yeah, the rationale is pensions, but it seems to be more directed at Macron, and so I think these are general strikes as well. It's not just protests. So I do think there is an element of, well, we're just going to bring the country to a halt and force Macron to resign, and maybe even force an election. I don't know.
Fair enough. Biarki in the chat is saying, "Let me know when you're ready to counter signal Grinder Greg Johnson for the same reason, fam." Biarki, I like Biarki, by the way. He's got a good channel. Go and check him out. I would counter signal Grinder Greg Johnson for the same reason all the time. Grinder Greg Johnson has a well-deserved reputation for just tracing white young men in third world and second world nations. Sorry, I don't think that's very right wing. I mean, maybe Biarki, you do. I mean, I know that the Nazis, for example, always had a certain number of gay people. But yeah, I will absolutely counter signal Greg Johnson just for that reason, because he got his nickname of Grinder Greg for chasing like young blokes around the world. And I'm sorry, I don't think that's the right way. I'm a straight white man. And I support straight white men.
I mean, with France, though, I mean, if Macron wins, it's gay. If the left wins, it's gay. It's just all gay, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, emotionally wise, there's no point being invested in it. There's no point being invested in the side. It's just the reason why I think it's been important is there's been like the front news story yesterday, day before, was France in flames, and then King not visiting France because of safety concerns. So there has definitely been like a concerted push to basically to turn it into more of a like an international crisis of some sort.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyone else got anything to say on this? Adam?
I think he's gone off.
Oh, sorry.
To get something.
Mitch, you got anything else to say on this?
I mean, nothing about Grinder Greg or Nick Fuentes. There's nothing that I can say that's not already been said about them. So it's just
I don't know Toby Nicks. I don't know your mate Phil. Although I really would like to get a couple of right-wing based Kiwis in my Discord. Can't find any at the moment, but that's going to be our next subject in a sec. But yeah, sorry, carry on, Mitch.
I mean, I'm down aside from Action Zealandia, is there anything in New Zealand for this side of things? I don't think there is.
There's got to be. Well, I mean, there are right-wing New Zealanders, of course there are, but they're hard to find. In World War II, in North Africa, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, the commander of the Africa Corps, called the New Zealand division the best soldiers fighting on the British side. And like this week, this week we've had what's her name? She used to be called Posey Parker. Kelsey J. Keane or something like that is her real name. And she's a TERF. She's a trans exclusionary feminist. Now, I can't support these people. I just can't. Because
I've seen. Also,
so you can come in a minute, mate. I can't support them because feminists spent decades destroying every single male-only space they could find because it suited them at the time. And now they want us as blokes to support them to keep female-only spaces. Now, I totally do support them in the sense of keeping mentally ill trans people out of little girls' bathrooms and changing rooms and all that kind of stuff. I absolutely do, but I can see the irony of this shit. And like Kelly J. Keane only survived in New Zealand at all because of her male bodyguards. Otherwise, she would have been seriously injured. The violence was so bad. The New Zealand police did nothing until long after it was obvious that she wasn't going to be allowed to speak and she was running away, surrounded by her bodyguards, who were all blokes, of course, because only blokes make good bodyguards. But yeah, I have a problem with some of this. I really do. They're not our friends. These people, they're not.
Who are we talking about?
And I fully like people like Lady Scott who goes to some of these protests. And I understand why she does, and I fully support her. And Lady Charlotte is a great woman, and she's a mother and a wife, and I think she's fabulous. But the people they're doing this with are TERFs, and they're trans exclusionary feminists. Some of whom are even political lesbians. They're not lesbians because they're really that way, but they don't think they should have anything to do with blokes. Sorry, they're not our allies. No one on the right should think they're our allies because they're not. They've just been brought up face to face to reality that men and women are not the same, very strangely. And
are you talking about these?
Are real.
Are you talking about these like Posey Parker and these protests in Australia?
Yeah, absolutely, right. Absolutely, Armin. Yeah, look, Posey Parker is a feminist.
Mm. Oh, like her anti-trans thing comes from a position of man-hating, ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't get me wrong, she's not the worst of feminists. She's a married woman. I think she's Mrs. Kelly J. Keane in reality. And she wears makeup and she tries to make herself look pretty and all this, which I've nothing against. But she's a feminist. And they're not our allies. And people on the right who think they are they're deluding themselves.
Yeah, but they can have they can dress up, look cute, and have their little protests. Doesn't bother me. I'm far too sexist to actually blame women for anything.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. I get your point. I think 555 has a good point. The whole thing is blaming men.
Ataman, we know who you blame.
Yeah. Yeah.
I blame men mostly, but yeah.
Yeah. So,
but yeah,
I blame
look, if anyone watches the video that Lady Charlotte put up on YouTube and other people put up, Kelly Jane Keane would have got really seriously hurt, but for her male bodyguards. And those guys took a load of shit. They really did.
I mean, in the UK, we've seen J.K. Rowling, who's been the, I guess, sort of the main sort of figurehead against the
And another
trans.
feminist, of course.
Yeah, and she, I mean, well, she's a feminist. She's incredibly left wing, supporter of Blair, I believe, in the day as well. So,
Yep.
you know, I'm. She created the environment which she lives in, and so there's, for me, I'm just of the opinion, you made your bed, you're lying it now. All the abuse that she gets from all these psycho trannies, I mean, it's kind of, I have very little to no sympathy.
They're not all
Um,
trannies, AI. I'm sorry to interrupt you. They're not all trannies. There are
well,
loads of
a lot of
there are loads of feminist women, and there are also loads of lefty soy boy men as well.
yeah, but a lot of these, when I say trannies, I also include people who just say, oh, I'm gender fluid or non-binary or they
Sorry.
them or
Yeah, no,
it
okay.
it why or yeah. I don't mean like just physical trannies. I mean just in people who have just as we have just pointed out, redefined what all the terms of gender itself, and deconstruct it like the left love to do. But I mean, at the end of the day, in my view, I have no sympathy. And I mean, yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, I personally, I wouldn't interview any. I wouldn't even. I've said before with guys on Wellington Project and other things. I wouldn't. I'm not going to interview or get involved with the turf war stuff because number one, it's a load of bullshit, and number two, it's it would just be me talking to the turfs and say, well, you wanted this left-wing progressive world, and I would respect them if they said, you know what, we were wrong, we've ruined society, we created this mess through all these ultra egalitarian laws, we didn't recognize that there was a genuine difference between the sexes, we're sorry, but they still believe in the bullshit that's caused this problem. So yeah, as I say, it's just two scumbags fighting each other, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, I also think that in the Melbourne protest that I know Lady of Shot went to, of course, there were about a dozen Nazi laughers doing their stuff. And what that enabled was the mainstream media to immediately run a thing that the whole protest was Nazis.
Yeah, I mean, not. Let's be honest. Most of them are probably either undercover officers, and then a few of them are probably just a bunch of schizos and and everything else, online schizos that were enticed to go in public. But yeah, these sorts of Nazi laughers, wherever they are, I mean, most of the time they either are just alphabet agencies or they're just all alphabet agencies, aren't they, really?
I wish I thought that was true. I really wish I thought that was true. I think some of them are just dudes who are so fucking stupid that they can't see that if we do this here, that will just make this whole thing about us.
I don't.
And
I
will
don't actually see that much of an issue with it.
will enable the mainstream media to then just spin it that way to all the moronic normies who don't really know what's going on in the background at all.
But they were going to spin it that
I
way
think
anyway.
I mean, the trouble is there is this ridiculous tendency on the right, and this you saw this at Charlottesville. Is that there is like this,
no one learned anything from Charlottesville, did they?
no, and remember, Fuentes was, again, he was involved in that as well in the first place, but he wasn't a major figure at that point. But the thing is, there is an element of the right that love to role play as the villainous Nazis that the media, through popular culture has created. They love to role play as the villain, and that is a problem in on itself, because whether it's marching through the streets saying who won't replace us, or doing Roman salutes. I mean, they love it because they're playing into the sort of villain fantasy, and that.
Sure,
It's-
but it
it's-
was like 6 guys, though, wasn't it? 6, 7 guys.
No, it was about a dozen.
No, I don't think it was quite that many, but still, a
Yeah,
dozen.
what it was at
Sure,
least a
whatever.
dozen.
It doesn't matter.
It was a dozen or
let's take a
15.
dozen. Let's take 15 then. It's 15 guys.
And that was the only thing the MSM paid any attention to whatsoever.
I like the thing with Charlottesville as well is I think even the Charlottesville thing was like largely overblown. A lot of that was
Of course it was.
no, like I mean a lot of it was like the alt-right's own leadership not doubling down, and just sort of kicking their own guys to the curb because they were panicking, because their balls receded and they panicked.
When Spencer did the famous Roman salutes, you mean?
Right, but he didn't do it then, did he? You're talking about 2 different events.
No, but like the same thing happened at both events.
Right, but I'm not talking about.
It's almost all right. You remember Jobu, who used to be on our Discord, who I kicked out, right?
Yep.
He said about that thing in Melbourne. Why did they not remember what happened at Charlottesville?
Okay.
Why didn't they?
We see Charlottesville was a two-parter, because the day before the main march, you had outside, because it was over a Confederate statue being removed on, I think it was a university campus, and you had Spence. I think it was Spencer's guys who were there at the time, and they, with tiki torches, they marched through the site saying, the Jews will not replace us, or something to that effect. And then that's what caused the media buzz.
I don't think it was as extreme as that, but yes, it was something like that. Yeah.
I'm pretty certain it was, because I do remember it quite well. Because that was, I'm pretty certain that was what they were chanting at the time. And then the next day you had, it was you had Spencer's guys there, and then you had, militia. You had the KKK, you had the Nazi Party of America. You had all these different groups that arrived,
and then you had something going on in the evening the next day with Richard Spencer and all the people who organised it.
Yeah, because then they had they wanted to have fights with the Antifa. And then, of course, you had that one guy who drove a car into the crowd.
That was much later and had nothing to do with anything really. Even though the guy got 1,000 years in prison,
but they connected it.
Yeah, well, they connected it.
It was all connected.
But it wasn't really. But they connected it. Yeah, absolutely.
And they're going to do that anyway.
Yeah, and they will do that anyway. But if you do go along to some event like this and you do your Roman salutes, they're always going to make you front and center, which appeals to some people.
We'll let them. I don't see why we should care. And I don't see why those people deserve to get called stupid for it. I think this is this bottling is exactly the issue the right's always had.
No, I don't think you're right.
Yeah, no, it is.
I would just say don't do the Roman salute.
Yeah, probably to people in chat or to anyone here. But once it's done, I don't see the point in throwing people under the bus, who are.
Oh yeah, don't do it. I mean,
all right.
There's also another problem.
Sorry,
I was just going to say, football. There's also there's another problem as well, because I do also remember that some of the Ulster Unionist organisations, they have the Red Hand of Ulster, and so there's one which I believe it looks like a Roman salute, but it's not. It's just signify red hand of Ulster hand gesture, which again predates the mid-century stuff. And for a long time, anytime there was protests or like even like football related stuff where the hand signal goes up, it was always reported as like, you know, Nazi salutes. So that there could be a scenario where you're even stretching your arm out to point or do like a chanting sort of thing, and one image taken, and it from a certain angle, it looks like you're doing a salute, even if you weren't intending to do it. So
Well,
that's
there was an
also another thing
instance at the when they had the whole protest at the old statue malarkey in London, sort of during the sort of in and around the summer of Floyd. And they had a counter protest to like defend the statues, and there was a point where the guys were pointing past the police line at something, and a photographer took a picture from the side, and it clearly wasn't them doing Roman salutes, but they just said it was. So yeah, that sort of shit happens all the time.
Yeah. So I mean, the media will, if they will, yes, we know they'll just constantly lie about it. I mean, I'm still of the view that I think attending protests is a waste of time, if I'm absolutely honest, especially for the right. Well, there is for the right, because there's always the risk that I mean, the UK in particular, because it's the most surveillanced in the world, and if you go to a right wing protest which is not authorized, you're undoubtedly your mugshot will be taken. You'll have so many photos of you. Your name will be collected, and it will go on a database somewhere. So, and you could have a visitation from the police, and job, all that sort of stuff.
How about the right wing doesn't do Roman salutes? How about we just don't do them? Why would that be so difficult?
I still don't quite get why you care so much about it.
Well, all right. As I said before, Kelly J. Keen's Let the Women Speak protest, I totally agree with her on there shouldn't be mentally ill trannies in little girls' bathrooms or changing rooms, etc. I totally agree with her on that. However, I can't really support her because she's a feminist. And most of her supporters are also feminists who have spent decades destroying every single male space they could possibly destroy. All right? But on the other hand, her protest in Melbourne that Lady of Shalott went to was completely destroyed by about 15 Nazi larpers who wanted to go and give Roman salutes. And so when she went to New Zealand, all she got was Nazi, 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 Nazi.
It wouldn't matter. They just wouldn't have talked about it at all if those guys hadn't been there.
I think it was much worse than it would have been otherwise, to be honest, mate. And go and watch the video that Lady of Shalott put up.
I've seen it. I've watched
the attacks on her. Like she was surrounded, and had she not had male bodyguards, she would have got seriously hurt.
I've seen
it. Because the soy boy lefties would have absolutely punched her, because that's the only people soy boy lefties could punch, because they're so cowards.
So maybe they do need 15 tough NS guys there then.
I don't know. Look, this is just my view. I just think that all of this stuff, and Jobu said this as well, and I don't always agree with Jobu, as you guys know, but he was entirely correct. Don't do this stupid Nazi laughing bullshit. It just plays into the hands of the MSM. Don't do it.
I just think that saying, "Oh, look what a threat to our democracy these 12 or 15 guys are," is
I never
kind
said
of bad
that,
optics.
did I?
No, but that's what they're saying. And you're complaining that it gives them something to shoot at, and I'm saying,
No,
look what
I'm
it is they're
saying
shooting
that
at.
what it did was it meant that no one discussed what the actual protest was about, which was actually to try and stop mentally ill trannies going into little girls' bathrooms and changing rooms.
Yeah, but a
That
protest
was
isn't going
what
to
the
stop anything
protest was
anyway, is it?
about. All right, maybe not. But if there hadn't have been that, they might have had to have talked about that a bit rather than, oh no, they're all Nazis.
I don't think they would have talked about
The
it.
problem is, one of the problems is because while all the boomers and people like Carl still, still sort of drone on about the Nazis being the ultimate evil, the problem is when you have people who still go out and do Roman suits, and I have seen some of the footage. I think the reason they did it was just to antagonize the feminists.
Yes, of course
think
it
it was
was.
just.
They just
And
wanted to
I
annoy
understand.
the lefties. I get that.
I understand. Yeah, I get that as well, and I understand that. And that was a thing in the moment. They probably weren't thinking about optics and long term, the long term impact of that, because that's not how people usually work on protests. It's usually in the here and now. But while the reason why boom was titled as Boomer Truth or the myth of the Second World War is so prevalent, is while that still goes ahead in the minds of everybody, it will just reinforce as well that the Nazis are still real, they're still here, and everything. And
yes.
that 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 is that is a problem in on itself. And while they still do it, you'll still have Carl and you'll still have all the other boomers going on about Nazis being the ultimate evil in the world. And okay, I don't want to chuck them under the bus, but at the same time, I'd just like to explain to them, just don't do it, because otherwise we still have to put up with this shit from what on discourse when we still can't.
The ridiculous
And it holds everybody.
thing,
It holds them back.
The ridiculous thing, AI, is that in World War II, neither the British or the Australians or anybody else on our side of the fence were fucking Nazis anyway.
But what if you're German? Like what about our budding?
Look at the state of Germany today.
Whoa, hang on a minute. Look at the state of Britain.
Well, listen. At least we didn't have our major ally carve our main source of fuel.
Well, the thing is, I mean,
the only winner of World War II was the Soviet Union
and America.
Beyond. And America, yeah. I mean, Britain and Germany didn't win the war.
No, not at all.
So
not at all.
Yeah, no. And there's been footage I've been seeing go around today of like a couple of war veterans. I think it might be quite a few years old footage, but some of them saying, it wasn't worth it. With hindsight, looking at the country today.
100%.
So
100%.
Yeah, it wasn't worth it, and yeah. So, I mean, yeah, we all of us live under the American Empire and what happened with it. I mean, at the same time, I just want to move beyond the Second World War. I want to move beyond it, and I'd just tell these guys, that did it. I would just say to them, listen, I'm not throwing you under the bus. I'm not gonna go after you and call you a bunch of Nazis and go all like mental on you. I'm just gonna say, next time, can you please not do it? Because every time any right-wing movement does something like this, it only just holds you back and it holds us back.
Do something Australian
not helpful.
Do something Australian.
Yeah.
Nationalist.
Harken back to the Empire. Harken back to
100%,
something.
100%.
And like, I know that you have a lot of like Greek Italians and everything else. Okay, maybe not even Australian. Just harken back to something. Hell, just like Christian nationalism. I don't know. I don't care. Just anything. Just not that.
Absolutely,
because
totally
if you
agree with you 100%.
because if you were to harken back to some sort of British, Australian imperialistic thing, it can't really be. I mean, they would call you Nazis, but it would be hard. It wouldn't, you know,
It wouldn't
it
stick.
wouldn't really work as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, it wouldn't stick as well.
No Roman
Yeah.
salutes. It don't stick.
Yeah. Same thing with like the EU referendum in this country. There was a lot of accusations of the Brexit side being Nazis, and people. The response was general eye roll, because at that point, even at that point back in 2016, like it is today, the term racist and Nazi was losing, and I think now it's lost all meaning now.
But
Really,
it's ridiculous to
Um,
call British or Australian people Nazis when we fucking well fought them.
They don't
It's
care.
ridiculous. I know they don't care, Alman, but it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. But don't give them excuses to be able to say, "Oh no, you actually are a Nazi." Because see that Nazi salute there.
Well, the excuse is like, why is the Australian state flying like troon flags on so many of their buildings? Because 15, by your estimation, spicy nobodies threw up Romans. I mean, like, as far as optics go, that's really shit for them. I'm just going to say it. A win's a win, right? A win's a win. I'm taking
But
it.
it wasn't a win for us, Alman. I wish it was. It wasn't, though.
It is a bit of a Mars slip, to be honest, on their part.
I'm sorry, mate. Most normies will not notice it even slightly because
Who cares about normies?
Because that's the only people you're trying to convert.
Why?
Even Lady of Shalott said that her neighbour said, right? Lady of Shalott went to the march in Melbourne where the 15 dudes did their shit, all right? And Lady of Shalott, who lives in a quite nice suburb of Melbourne, her neighbour turned around and said, "Oh, you were at the Nazi protest?" Because that's the only thing the dumb thick shit bitch
So why are you
noticed.
trying to convince these people then?
Because had they not done that, if they'd have covered, they probably wouldn't have covered it at all, all right, without that. But without that, had they covered it even like in a 25-second segment, no one could have called Lady of Shalott a Nazi. Which she isn't, by the way. So,
But they were going to call it that anyway. Like, maybe not.
No,
today,
I'm sorry. I
will
hear
do.
this shit all the time. I don't agree with it, mate. I hear this from the right all the time. Oh, they're going to call us Nazis anyway, so it doesn't matter what we do. That is not true.
Well, it matters what we do, but they are going to call you that anyway. Hang on. It matters what you do, right? Because it's dependent on what other people do on the other side of it. If it's 1,000 guys with tiki torches storming a building, then that's not an optics win for us. If it's the Australian government having to react to this tiny group of nobodies, right, who literally have to mask up, it's not the flex the state thinks it is.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree with you on that, but if they hadn't have done the Nazi salutes, all of the coverage of that protest, which, like I said, I can't totally agree with it because it's a feminist thing, but on the other hand, I don't want mentally ill trans people in little girls' bathrooms, would have had to have been different. They wouldn't have been able to just say, "Oh, look, everyone's a Nazi at this protest." And all of the communist bastards who were protesting against it and doing most of the violence were presumably okay because, of course, the MSM said nothing about that.
I just don't get it. I mean, you play, as I say, you'll play. I mean, you just forget the general public's perception of what a Nazi is, and they're just playing. They're not even playing into like the genuine National Socialism, or the ideology itself. They're just playing into the villain aspect, the pop culture villains, and I just don't get it.
Totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. That's what they're doing. But
I just
help
don't get
them.
it. I mean,
Don't help them is all I'm saying.
yeah, just don't do it. I mean, if you're there to protest, against the trans stuff, I mean, it kind of has to be tailored to that, I guess, if you want to protest. But at the same time, I mean, protest is useless at this point because, well, we've been arguing about it, about optics, and you've had a few idiots in chat who are, saying, "Oh, this is boomer optics and boomer takes," and it's like, well, no, this is just strategy. This is
Yeah,
just pure
I'm
power and
I'm just
strategy and
talking about what
observation.
normies
And
notice in their news. That's
well, there's a
all
few
I'm
normies.
talking about.
But it looks like there's a few normies in chat, to be honest. Well, one particular one as well in chat who's just obviously doesn't understand how power works, and you know, um, I mean, I
Guys,
guess
guys,
I'm not. I'm
Biarki wants to
hold on. I'm
join.
not.
Should I let him?
I mean, I'm fine with it. Do you want me to send him a link or?
If you know Biarki, yeah, go for it,
Um,
mate. You can come on for 5 minutes. We're not
I'm
going
gonna
to go
have to
much
head
longer.
off in a. I said
All right,
he can take my
carry on,
place if you want.
AI. You carry on until you do.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say I'm gonna have to head off in a sec, so he can probably just take my slot on here, and you can thrash it out. But um, the I mean, ultimately, my final point on this is, it doesn't really. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter fundamentally, because the problem is I guess there's also part of me that does think, well, even if they didn't do a Nazi salute, the protests wouldn't really come down to anything, because protests are just I mean, they're a way of vent for the right to vent and contain them in the myths of the civil rights movement, and the idea that protests will achieve anything. Protest doesn't usually achieve anything. If you're in Australia, the only thing I can recommend is get involved in local politics. I don't know what the education system is like out there, like
It's at
how
least
one
as
is
bad as the
influenced.
British one.
Okay, so all I can say is, you can either organize and create like I think like people create like a think tank or something to try and push through something, that route, and just organize with local minded people, um, and don't do protests. I mean, my final message is just don't do protests, because it's just a huge waste of time.
AI, look, Biarki is saying in the chat, 5 minutes for Gab. See, I said he can come on and he can have 4 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes or even 25 minutes if what he has to say is that interesting. But I'm sorry, mate. Like, I can offer you to come on, but if you just turn around and say no, then that's your fault, not mine. All right? Sorry, AI. Carry on.
No, I'm still gonna have to go, is unfortunately, but
That's fine, man. Look, I don't expect
no, I
anyone to
was going to
sit
say I don't
here
usually.
for 2 hours.
No, I don't want to. It's just I don't. I know I don't usually duck out early, but I'm just feeling particularly tired at this point. But
That's fine,
I
man.
mean, yeah, ultimately though, I mean, as I say, I don't think, I think I know Charlottesville is the extreme example, but ultimately that is what the powers that be would push any right wing protest to become.
Right.
That's what they want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. But that was helped by what the right wing did.
Right, but it was helped
I
most by their
mean, there were a
leadership,
lot
which
of
cucked and threw their own
Yeah,
guys under the
absolutely
bus.
right. I mean, who the fuck trusts
I mean,
what's his
the
name?
thing, the thing that is, there's also, and I know there's a few people in the chat that will not like me saying this, but there are a lot of people in right-wing organizations who are not who they say they are. And I'm sorry, yes, they are feds. They do work for the government. There are some people on the right who, no matter what they say or do, literally nothing happens to them. Who are all these are people who organize. They're organizers, they're leaders, and nothing
100%.
happens to them.
Yep. Semiagog
and-
always says this. Everyone on the right is a Fed until they prove they are not. And Semiagog is entirely correct about that.
Yeah, but isn't his point more that anyone could be a Fed, so you kind of have to act accordingly, as if you're,
you
know,
it is absolutely, Adam, and that is his point, and I think he's entirely correct.
I mean, I had someone today follow me on Twitter, and he's called Hitler Rape Brexiteer.
So have you got Mel Gibson fan 200 and whatever?
I'd be a little bit suspicious of that.
Yeah, and he's only just joined. He's joined like this month. His like bio is Brexit is the first step on the road to total worldwide white supremacy. He's following all the like dissident right accounts.
Is he by any chance in the 7th Brigade of the British Army?
He's got like an image of Farage with a
Nazi moustache.
No, it looks like a Confederate outfit actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think he was a 7th Brigade guy working for the British Army. If I was you.
Yeah,
that's what
I'm looking at that. And I mean, on a final note, 'cause I'm going to have to go now, but if any of you guys come across these people and you get DMs where they say, can you look after a suitcase? I'm in town. Can you look after a suitcase for me? Or let's meet up and discuss things that we've been discussing online. Don't do it, because I mean, you know why. You just don't do it.
Well said,
anyway,
well said.
Thanks for having me on, and thank
you
guys.
Welcome. If you want anything plugged in the description, AI, please DM me and I'll stick it in there tomorrow.
Oh yeah, no, that's all right. It's just my channel and stuff, but I think most people here know about it. So no, thanks for having me on, and I'll see you all next time.
Yeah, see you later.
Yeah, welcome for joining us, AI. Cool. Mitch, Adam, while we wait to see if Bjarki is going to join us, you guys got anything to say? Oh, here he is. Bjarki, good day, sir.
All right, buddy. How's it going? Sorry, mate, not buddy. Not Americans around here. Buddy.
That's all right. Look, you haven't only been offered 5 minutes.
I'm a little bit. It's all right. I'm just a little bit more of a right-wing Karen in the chat. It only comes across that way.
No worries. But you haven't only been offered 5 minutes. Like, we can do another half an hour if.
Well, I just made a new Twitter.
Stick around.
I just made a new Twitter. I had the genius idea that Adam could send me the link because I'm not in your Discord, which I could be because I've got a Discord as well, actually. I'm a little bit low tech, but I figured out how to use that as well, although still not on Telegram.
And you're an Aussie, I believe, because you do.
Well, apparently. I mean, Randbot and his crew will say I'm not Aussie because I don't live there anymore, while they do a show specifically for Americans. So.
But you do you put up quite a lot of pretty good Aussie videos about.
This is the point. Let's get to it, right? Tom, Blair, Neil Erickson, all these people, right? They love Australia, right? They undoubtedly love their country. However, they have made they've broken their own hearts first by choosing these bad optics, right? They know what they've done. They know that, like, for example, Blair Cottrell had a big falling out with Tom, and not a big one, but over the optics, over this fucking endless goddamn discussion. Okay, so Blair was saying he does because they were friends, before, and he's he doesn't like the whole white power, he doesn't like the Hail Hitler, he doesn't think, and they had a talk the other night on their Odyssey, okay, and Blair's first question was, why did you give the salute to them? Right? Why would you salute them? Right? And so obviously, it was largely provocative. But then he went on to explain the meaning of, like, not to sort of like, he wasn't trying to like outright deny connotations with Nazi Germany, but they discussed it in its older context as a Roman salute and a salute that indicates loyalty and honor. Okay, you may not agree with that, but that was his explanation.
I don't agree with that, but yeah.
Okay, of course you don't. No, I'm not trying to be like insulting or not, but I think you have less, shall we say, HATE in your heart than they do. They are very troubled youngsters. Many of the people that have gone to join him have had extremely sort of like, not extremely, but they've had turmoil in their youth, as many young men in Australia find themselves in, psychologically or, you know, socioeconomically.
And not just in Australia, also in UK
Yes.
and USA.
Yes. Yes. Now, when you, let me put it to you like this: when I was radicalized at around 10 to 11 to 12 years old in Sydney, in the beginning, radicalized meaning racially aware was random sort of gang types doing sort of standover muggings without much violence, you know, a little bit of a slap here and there, but, you know, sort of like give us your money that you were going to spend on McDonald's and the arcade machines, and you go home having done nothing. That's what you get for going to George Street and, you know, 12 years old. And I remember thinking, like, you know, like, I'm listening to hip hop. It's 1992 or 93 or something. It's like, hey, I'm trying to be inclusive. I'm trying to accept. Like, why these people? Why do they? Yeah, that's why I ended up a metalhead. But they said, well, you know, what are they doing? You know, we're trying to like, and you know, you've seen the meme that the 90s was like approaching a post-racial sort of society, apart from like grunge and all that sort of bullshit. Like, I know I'm going off course here, but the 90s was objectively like a black decade, if you want to take it there. Like, it was hip hop, it was R&B, it was movies, it was everything. They got given everything, and still wasn't.
I'd lost it by the 90s, mate. I got to say.
Yeah, but either way,
in the 80s, I might have somewhat agreed with you, but in the
no, I mean the 90s was like a black decade. Anyway, a lot of people grow up now, especially in America, especially in certain Wignac circles I know, not just recognizing but embracing the legitimate male toxicity in the hip hop culture. They think it's the only legitimate form of, like, you know, being masculine and, you know, apparently being rude and singing about women in derogatory ways and glorifying crime and drugs and all that sort of stuff. So there's that sort of aspect for people who don't end up down this sort of like sanctioned sort of like identity, even if they want to make it hostile. They end up sort of like okay, when the left say that these neo-Nazis want a brotherhood and they want a sense of belonging, they're not wrong. However, it's like, for example, like other youths, for example, like kebabs, they get affected by the degeneracy of the Western world, which is often what leads them to want to join these brotherhoods of honor and honor and loyalty and that sort of thing. So that's why often you see sort of parallels. I refuse to ever engage in any sort of memes being anything remotely pro-Islam, but that's another story. And these young boys who have grown up extremely online as well, from what I can understand, they get to a point where they're like, okay, they accept what you may accept to various degrees, which is the whole problem with Brutus and the 37 gang when it first started, as the certain facts about, how do you say, a little bit of a lack of restraint of what the Brits did on Germany. Okay, so I'm not here to cry about Dresden, but Dresden absolutely was like a shit show.
Because you won't win on this channel.
Sorry, yes, but what I'm trying to say is that this like brutality, it could have all been avoided.
The Germans were pretty brutal on Coventry,
yes,
for example.
Yes, yes.
There
but
was a
but
lot
it's
of
kind of-
brutality in World War II.
Yes, yes, but there's
Not gonna-
brutality. Yes, but the kind of things that subject and that optics conversation is nothing compared to this genital mutilation and psychotic satanic shit that's going on at the moment. And that's
All right,
why
fair enough.
putting that aside, right? There are certain facts that aren't sort of faced on our side, especially from your sort of side of things and from those other lads, is that you can talk about Bomber Harris until the cows come home, but who actually recognizes the facts that all those book burnings were done outside an institute, which set the ball rolling on this madness? Okay, though the books that were burnt were outside this section institute, by certain doctors.
I know you're right.
Right.
I know you're right about this entirely, but I don't think it's got anything to do with Dresden. But all right, carry on.
Yeah, but on another subject, right?
Sorry,
If
Paul,
they
can you,
recognize
just a second, can you just adjust your mic a bit? You're a bit getting a bit of wind
bit too
noise.
close.
Yeah,
too close. I was
you're a bit fluffing
That's
into
all right.
your own mic.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I've got an old Nokia headset. It's like I didn't have a planned subject to go into, but I'm going a bit all over the place. But if you recognize that a certain people wanted to, for example, keeping on subject with the rally, if you recognize that, for example, Germans wanted to deal with this genital reassignment surgery business that was, regardless of ancient cults in India or Mesopotamia, it was initiated in Germany. Like, we know that on this channel, right?
Weimar, Germany. Yeah, all right.
Yes, and it was.
I'll go along with that.
Well, it's not to go along with. It's just what happened, and those book burnings were done outside.
Yes,
the
I know.
institute.
I know you're right about that. I'm not disputing what you're saying.
Okay,
here about
right.
book burning.
So when young men are angry at the situation, right, and when and even when they figure it out in Australia, which is a country that is hard to wake up in, being that there's still a majority population of our people there, right? But once they come to the conclusions, once they go, through the process and realize how bad things are and how bad they want to, how bad they want it to end up. Can't you understand that they don't care about this optic stuff? I understand what you're saying. I understand
You mean
your
all
argument.
15 of them, you mean?
15 who? Of Tom's boys?
On that particular demonstration we're talking about, you're talking about 15 blokes, I think, roughly.
Yeah, what does that matter? It was 20 boys that would have easily dealt with 200 of those freaks easily. They weren't afraid whatsoever.
That's an exaggeration, but 100.
No, it's not. Those freaks cannot fight. I would take on 6 of them easily.
You are not getting an argument from me about this, because I know that all of those soy boys and feminists and what have you are scum, and they're all useless.
And they can't fight.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Okay. So I've come here to tell you a story, right? I just to open the conversation.
I'm letting you do it for the most part.
Okay, all right. No, that's all right. Well, no, I'm getting to it. So I painfully sort of put my nose in places where it doesn't belong sometimes, just to sort of gauge different sort of movements. Now there's one sort of movement that's called Expose the 28 Freedom from Canberra, right? Sorry, 555, don't tell me to get to the point. You can just sit there and fucking listen. Anyway, so this movement in Canberra, right, is called Expose the 28 Freedom from Canberra. They're like, basically, it's kind of like a Pizzagate kind of thing. They're going on about like all these pedophiles in the government, okay? And every morning they get out their megaphones and they're like yelling across. They're like down in Canberra in Parliament House, like, lest we forget, like Australian Christian, essentially civic nationalists, but they're all white. They just don't look in the mirror and realize the sort of the common denominator. But these Christians, a few months ago, I went to their chats and I tried to, you probably wouldn't even approve of it either. I tried to sort of, radicalize them on the white issue. On, you're going on about, the medical tyranny and the pedophiles in the government and this, that, and the other. I says, but this example from Britain and this example from Germany, and this is the common thread here that we are specifically first targets. Trying to just plant some seeds in their mind. Okay, and I said, look.
Biaki, what do you think about this new, the indigenous voice thing that they're trying to plug at the moment? because I'm totally against it. But what do you think about that?
Well, from what I understand, because it's difficult for me to keep up with details, from what I understand is it hasn't been laid out properly for people to make a decision one way or the other. And that's why this Lydia Thorpe doesn't make her position clear on it, because it doesn't seem like it's actually been laid out like this is how it's going to be. And you can decide whether you like it or not. The situation with the general theory is that there's already large areas of territory in Australia where you can't go without access, and they want to increase that. Yeah. So you can have, you know all these points. Like I've been to Arnhem Land, I've been to all these places, right? What I do actually have a soft spot for them is that they actually don't have the choice to go back to their old way of life anymore. Because whatever they do in those local areas is a shadow of what they used to do. They'll hunt, but they won't eat. They'll hunt for fun. Like when I was in Arnhem Land, they just like spear blue-tongued lizards just for fun.
Yeah, I've been to Arnhem Land. I got a permit.
Yeah, but anyway, what I think about that is, I mean, I can kind of get back to that, but I just wanted to finish that point about that freedom thing. So I've been in the chat trying to talk to them, and then one of them said, "Oh, are you a Nazi?" And I said, "Oh, well, it can be called things like that, I guess, But and I said, look, I don't want to stink up the place. I'll leave you guys alone." And I left the chat because, I didn't want to give them a bad reputation. Not that I would, but, Now, after this rally that happened in Melbourne, I went into their chat and I spoke to one woman, one of the mods, actually spoke about some cryptozoology sort of random subject, but she remembers me. And I says, "Look, you realize those men in black were on your side?" And she's like, "What? What do you? Oh, that's weird. What do you mean?"
All right, Biaki, I've got to stop you there. Mate. Yeah.
Okay.
I know from their point of view, giving them the best possible, what's the word? Their best possible motivation. Yeah.
Because they are best possible young Australian boys. But yeah.
Well, I'm not going to go that far.
Of course they are. They're proud and loving of their country, young boys. They're just using optics.
That's fine, mate. And you can say that, and that can be your view. I think their leader was a bit more intelligent than that, but that's just my opinion, my humble opinion. But all they did was they made the whole rally only about what they did, and all the stuff about trying to keep mentally ill tranny people out of little girls' bathrooms went by the wayside as a result.
No, because everyone saw the sign.
If you say so, mate. I don't.
No, everyone saw the sign. What are you talking about? Did you see how big the sign was? They only had one.
Yeah, I saw that sign. Yeah, I did.
Okay, right. So okay. First of all, let me know when anyone else. Okay, let me know when anybody else is going to do that.
As soon as they did that, the whole thing made the whole demonstration, not because that's what happened, but because that's what the MSM wanted it to be. All of it became, oh yeah, there was 15 Nazis there. And so everyone there was a Nazi.
Okay, so in this chat I was in with these like freedom movement, not the same freedom movement that was at Melbourne, a different one, who was specifically against these pedophiles in the government. Like I said, they called Expose the 28. Some of them, or one woman specifically, was receptive. She was just trying to understand. She's like, but if they were on our side, why were they doing those salutes and stuff like that, right? Now, the other fellow was saying, they were there because they are a government plant and they are protected by the cops and they are feds, and that Aussie Cossack was saying that they're feds because they're fit, kind of like the thing they said about Patriot Front in America.
But what I was going to say, Aussie Cossack, I gotta say, I'm not anti-Aussie Cossack at all, but I think he pushes it sometimes.
Yes, well, him saying that they were feds because they're fit and strong, and that is like what they said about Patriot Front in America. Anyway, the guy saying that
Patriot Front in America were almost all feds, as far as I understood, from what Americans told me.
Well, I don't. Yeah, okay. Well, I don't want to make a smart-ass comment about that, but moving on. The guy in the chat was saying the reason they went there, their purpose was to ruin it, like you're kind of trying to say, by saying that when normal people see that, the first thing they think is that the only people opposing this are Nazis.
I
Okay.
didn't and don't think that was their only
No,
thing.
no,
But
but the
I
outcome.
don't believe the leader of them, not the ordinary blokes who did it, but the leader of them. I don't believe he was thick enough not to know that that would be the result.
Okay, so people interpret it like, oh, okay, well, it must be bad to go against this stuff because Nazis are going against it, right?
Yep. Some
Okay,
idiot normies think that, yes, for sure.
Right. Okay, and then another from the left side of things, their interpretation is that the Nazis are protected by the police. And in this situation, I think the cops didn't know. They didn't have a back pocket plan to pull out. They didn't actually know how to deal with the situation. However, saying that they're protected and that the cops were there to protect the women speaking and all this sort of stuff it's kind of besides the point. Is that nobody else, not Proud Boys, not any Anglo-Celtic, not that it exists. There's no one else that was going to come. So first of all,
there aren't no Anglo-Celtic.
Yeah, right. So this is what you need to. This is where you need to get a grip and realize that if this is the vanguard, if this is the berserker, like ultra psycho force, like in war, because you have some knowledge, a lot of knowledge, that there's always like kind of nutters that they send out like first.
No,
Okay, well, I lived in Belfast for many years, and people told me that when they had skirmishes, they always had like a few, 4 or 5 sort of like gun-ho nuts that would go ahead of the army in Range Rovers.
Who the British Army would kill quite easily, but yeah.
Well, I'm talking about both sides. I'm talking about both sides had
British Army never had that. No, they didn't. I'm sorry, mate. It's just not right.
Well, they didn't have rogues that would go a little bit more.
No, they didn't.
Okay, well, I guess a paramilitary Protestant that I spoke to was lying. Anyway,
he might have been talking about his own paramilitary group. He wasn't talking about the British Army. Didn't happen.
Yes, but,
never did.
However, this is an incarnation of that. What I'm describing of this sort of like fearless. No fucks given. We're here to destroy evil unit. Now, anyone saying that they are 1, feds, 2, protected by the feds, 3, went there for ego or narcissistic reasons, 4, just had any intention of giving that rally if you thought they wanted to work with the media to silence the actual message, the message was going to be silenced anyway. And it probably brought way more light to
you guys always say. You always say that.
What?
You always say the message will be silenced anyway and just make an excuse.
No, but it is, because this isn't just a war on white people. This is a war on white women. Those women speaking represent an antithesis to what they are trying to produce, which is the destruction of healthy young minds. And it actually is specifically about women, because what people don't realize is that the trans thing actually affects women most, because it's often, the men that, decide they're going to be freaks when they're however old and want to go into the change room and film girls getting dressed and post it online and do this sort of stuff, or these autogynephiles or whatever you call them that get off on it, right? These are like sick men that want to prey on young girls, either girls who are transitioning themselves into being boys or just straight up girls in changing rooms and toilets and stuff like that. So what you have,
you don't think that the trans thing is actually more of a war on young men?
Because there's a war on women.
Because they don't want straight white men.
Yes, it's that as well. However, the people who are insecure, the people who are like easily affected by this, are young girls who come home and say, "Mummy, I want to chop my tits off." It's a much more straightforward procedure than actual genital dealing with, like, making fake vaginas and weird fake dicks and that. It's a fairly straightforward thing that they can come home, snap off their tits, and then start dressing like a boy and that.
It's
And
funny
and this
because like most of the trans people I see are male to female trans. Most of them.
elderly.
I don't see many female to male trans. I've heard people say this before. I just don't see them. I mean, I know
Well, you don't see any of them. You don't really see any of them. Anyway.
I don't. I have certainly seen some, but a minority compared to the mentally ill male to female
I've
trans.
actually seen some data that showed that female to male was almost as common, or even in some places slightly more common than the opposite.
That's what I'm trying to say. They're more vulnerable. They're more vulnerable to this, right? And this is affecting them. Now, there's women talking about this spaces, right? When we're living in a world where, for example, like a flasher in the old days, a flasher used to like, you flash in a coat and be jerking off in a park or whatever, and it'd be like indecent exposure would be a crime, right? These people going in these changing rooms, what it's about is what they call self-ID, self-identifying. So they're self-identifying as a woman and going into women's spaces where they're filming women getting undressed, where they're masturbating, watching them get undressed, where we live under a system where women's rights have absolutely been taken away. Now, these women who are TERFs and lesbians and whatever else, yes, they are disavowing and disgusted by the Nazis also, right? They are LGB, just not the T, okay? However, right, we don't need to have them online with us to support a message that is, even though, you could joke, I mean, like, look, this thing about the trad gay or the trad, like, the old fashioned, like, lesbian or gay, or there's always been gays, or the Richard Spencer sort of stuff, like, there's always been gays, there's always been this, okay, right, whatever, all right? The argument the left uses is that when they're accused of like being pedophiles, or when they're accused of like, this like ultra sick stuff, first of all, you can get in big trouble for that, for an accusation like that. As there's a fellow in Britain who is facing a fine for saying that about a trans drag queen story hour sort of thing. But they say that people will just associate homosexuality with pedophilia, and that's wrong. You can't just slander us and say that we're all pedophiles. So they will automatically go to the fact that the right, quote unquote right, will always try to falsely associate homosexuality with pedophilia, right? We agreed on that. That's something that's their argument in defense of when they're accused of being demonic fucking pedophiles. Okay.
Yeah, you see
they say, oh, but
social media especially.
Yes, now that is their go-to argument. It's also the go-to argument, for example, like in Russia, where they say, oh, well, Russians, they just think all gays are pedophiles, so they think all gays are pedophiles. And it's like, I don't want to bring up like names or any sort of like big streamers in these circles who have homosexuals on their show.
A fair number of pedophiles are gays, it has to be said.
Yes. Okay, so these are the talking points we're fleshing out.
The slope is not a lie.
On that note, though, I will have to head off. I've stayed a lot longer.
All right, before you leave, though, Adman.
Thanks for the link.
Yeah, no worries.
Adman, before you leave, do I have trannies on my streams?
Not that I know of. We'll have to see.
Do I allow them on my streams?
Not as a policy, no.
No. Right, thank you.
You know who I'm referring to. You know who I'm referring to.
Yeah, of course I do.
Anyways.
Yeah,
all right, we'll see you, Adam.
Later. Yep.
Thank you for joining us, Adam. You're always very welcome, mate.
Yep, no worries. Good night, everyone.
See you, mate. Anyway, dude, I just came on to say, like, as long as you don't think that they're like protected by the cops or that they're feds and this sort of stuff, like let me give you. No, I know. No. Okay, but okay, let's put it this way. I mentioned Blair Cottrell earlier. Okay, now he was at first like you, like, well, we shouldn't be using those optics. That's not Australian. That's
believe
German.
We shouldn't be using those optics.
Yes, and ideally, ideally, you are correct. Ideally, And ideally, I also support some tenets of this 37 business where they refuse to be told to be guilty for the empire, and they refuse to apologize for
100%.
basically. Right,
100%.
yeah, right. However, what's happening now is as you know, the religions of the world, the Holocaust, slavery, and colonialism. Those three things inform like all discourse now. So like when you have non-whites from Britain on Q&A on ABC talking about dismantling the monarchy and post-colonial sort of like basically eradication of white culture because of the sins of colonialism, that is a weapon just as much as the Holocaust. Yes?
100%, but like I will never ever accept that. Never.
Yes, but it's used as a weapon in the same way the Holocaust is, right?
I understand it is, but I will
Yes.
never accept it because it's just not true.
Yes, but however, if the lads didn't have those optics, colonialism and pro-Anglo imperialism is going to be the same thing. Is going to be the same problem to them.
No,
Like
don't agree. Don't agree. Sorry, I just don't agree. They're not the same thing, and they weren't the same thing anyway.
No. We know they're not the same thing. What I'm trying to say is how they weaponize and how they, like, for example,
Wait,
what happened is history.
A group of 15 Nazi laughers doing Roman salutes is not going to make the British Empire all right in Australia. Don't talk crap.
Yeah, no. What actually happened is this history in the making. What we've seen, what happened in Melbourne last Saturday, that those 20 boys, 15, 20, whatever you want to say, that is history in the making, whether you like it or not.
Nonsense.
No, it absolutely was.
I wish I could say I thought you were right, but it isn't true. All it did was make when Kelly J. Keane, i.e. Posey Parker, went to New Zealand, she nearly got fucking killed by an enormous crowd of feminists and soy boys and mentally ill trannies. That's all it did. It did nothing else whatsoever, and it gave the excuse to the New Zealand MSN to portray her as a Nazi, which of course she isn't. She's a married woman and a mother, and it's nonsense.
Yes, but who is the people who are afraid? They look at the thing with the grooming. The cops were afraid. Everyone was afraid of talking about it. Labor councils afraid of talking about it. The only people not afraid to deal with this are people with bad optics. Yeah, but the only people who aren't afraid are Nazis. The only people who are not afraid to go out and be like, we are going against this.
True. I've spoken.
Of course it
about
is. Who else was there?
I've spoken about this stuff many times. Other people on my channel have spoken about this many times, and we're not Nazis. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but who else is going to be fearless enough to go against this evil? Okay, you talk about Lady Charlotte being there, right? What do you think she felt when she saw those boys there? She thought, oh, good, they're there in case it kicks off.
I am not going to pretend to say what Lady Charlotte felt about it. I do know that Lady Charlotte had her eldest son there, and he was specifically there to protect her. And I'm quite certain that Lady Charlotte's eldest son is not a Nazi of any description.
Yes, but if it kicked off, make no mistakes, those boys would have protected her and her friends and whoever.
Well, you are more confident on that than I am. They didn't.
Of course they would. They are men of honor, whether you agree with their optics or not.
They didn't look that powerful to me.
Those men are not cowards and are not plastic.
Never said they.
Nazis.
I never said they were cowards, but they didn't look that powerful to me. And they fucked off, escorted by the police. So whatever.
Yeah. But if it kicked off, you better believe that would have been a shit show. And quite frankly, it's interesting, like you mentioned Charlottesville, it's interesting when they want it to kick off and when they don't want it to kick off. And I tell you something, you know, when they want, and let me just make it simple for you, because we've got a lot of points all over the place. It seems like I came on to say a whole lot of words without saying anything. What I'm trying to tell you is like, when they want it to kick off, you'll know about it. And you know how? They want it to kick off when it's like what happened in New Zealand or what happened in Hobart. They want it to kick off when there aren't Nazis there. right? They wanted
Sure.
to kick off when
Don't
they don't have to
disagree.
deal with that. Yes,
I don't
when those
disagree with
Antifa freaks can go and attack those women the way they did without resistance, right? Is if it kicked off in Melbourne, and if Tom's boys got into a scrap with 200 Antifa, think about how big it would have been, right? Now, I don't know if they were itching for that, as the judge says he was itching for a fight with the black guy that grabbed his cameraman's throat. Another case of Australia's law being completely kaput. Because I'm sure you know about that case as well. So you have a system where all aspects of the government are going to do whatever they can to just destroy these people. They are in a panic. You have Davir Abramovich come out saying, "Oh, these men want to push us into gas chambers," of course, making it about him and his people. This situation, whether you like it or not, is an uprising in Australia. And this is a reaction to the satanic hell we're living in. So we can sit and moralize about optics till the cows come home.
Right.
Yeah, go. Sorry.
I just don't think this is an uprising in Australia. In some ways, I wish it was.
No, there is an uprising. He's spread throughout every state. His boys.
I agree that more people are waking up in Australia. I'm not going to.
I'm talking about an uprising of Nazis.
You're talking about an uprising of Nazis, are you?
Yeah, no, whether you like it or not, it's happening, and I'm not here to shield for it. I'm just saying this is what's happening.
I'm sorry, that's just crap.
Why do you think Davir Abramovich is going into a fit about it constantly? Why do you think they're banning the swastika and banning? Yeah, because
why were there only 15 blokes at that protest in Melbourne? If it's an uprising across Australia, why wasn't it 500?
I saw baby steps. Shit, man. Like, it's like, why wasn't it 200 people? It's going around Queensland. It's going around New South Wales. The thing is that ever since 2019 and this month, actually, a certain thing that happened by a certain Australian, obviously all these people are looking to get locked up forever. Okay. Now, if Tom goes to jail for what happened in the national park,
look, I don't think he should go to jail at all for that. Mm-hmm. I don't think he should go to jail at all for that, let alone forever. But let me say one thing, right? There were 15 blokes at that rally, less than 20 certainly.
Yeah, which put the fear into the establishment and the Antifa.
If you say so, I don't agree. I wish there'd been like 500. And then
Tom's not the only big fella there. They would have wiped the floor with that mob of communists.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure you're right. Look, mate. You said you wouldn't come on for 5 minutes. You've got 40 minutes. You've had 40 minutes. All right. And you're welcome to come back on another stream. But I've got to tell you, I don't agree with you. I think their optics were terrible. There was only about 15 of them, and they didn't look to me like warriors. But whatever. I could.
But it's not about agreeing. It's not about agreeing or not. What I'm just saying is that the facts are is that Australia is seeing a rise in this. The certain foreskin thieves are in a panic about it, right? They're creating all these laws.
If you say so.
Well, I'm saying so because they're creating laws. They're banning the swastika. They're banning the salute.
I know they are, mate. But like the vast majority of ordinary, average, normie Australians are not national socialists.
Yes, I understand. I understand that, but before I go, just think a little bit more reasonably. Do you think someone like Davis is going to come out countering this the way you are?
Who?
Joel Davis.
Oh, I know, but I'm not a huge Joel Davis fan.
But I don't care whether you like him or not. I'm just asking. This big brain, this guy. No, not ask you. Do you think he was going to signal? No. I asked you if you thought he was going to signal against it.
I don't think Joel Davis is all that intelligent, to be honest with you.
Well, okay. Well, either way, there's people, even Blair, are not signaling against it because whether you agree with it or not.
I'm not signaling against it. I'm signaling against the optics of what they did, which actually destroyed what the whole thing was supposed to be about, which was keeping mentally ill trannies out of little girls' bathrooms.
All right. Well, I'll let you go. But the last thing I'll say is yeah, people have got the message that Nazis also want to fight that evil, and it's not just lesbian TERFs who want to fight that evil. Is the main takeaway.
All right, then. I'm not a fan of lesbian turf.
Yes, and that's the point. If I can say one thing before I go, the point is to show the people that it's not only TERFs who they don't fucking know what that means. It's not only lesbians and feminists who, or first wave feminists who are sick of this bullshit. Normal
Fair
people
enough.
are sick of it, and when they see all their men in black with Australian flags and those salutes, they think, who are these guys? Anyway,
All right.
I'll let you go then, mate. I'll let you go.
No
Have a
worries.
good night. Bye-bye.
Look, I'm going to say, go and check out Bjarke's channel. Bjarke's channel has some great Australian documentaries on it, particularly about guys going through the bush and the outback. He's got some good stuff. I've watched quite a lot of his videos, even though I don't agree with some of the other stuff he comes out with. As always, I'm going to end us with a tune. Okay, so that was the Marquis of Granby, which is a British military march. And the Marquis of Granby famously charged the French, and he was charging so fast that his wig fell off. So he charged them bald-headed, as they say. I had a discussion with some young chaps in my Discord last week. If you are losing your hair as a young straight white man in his 20s, let me give you one piece of advice. Shave it off. Don't worry about it. Most women don't care. They don't care at all. So long as you don't have some weirdly shaped head, and preferably if you're taller than them. But I mean, there's loads of women who are shorter than 5'4". So, not that hard to be taller than girls. If you start to lose your hair, don't do comb overs, don't do any nonsense like that. Shave it off. Most women won't give a shit, and they will like you. Thank you very much for my guest this evening, AI and Adam, of course, and Mitch, and also Barkey. Kind to come on, even though we didn't always agree. And we'll see you next week for Splendid Isolation 116. And I may or may not do a birthday Q&A, question and answer, on the 27th, which is tomorrow, which is my birthday, sadly. I'm too old to support birthdays these days. I did say I was going to try and do a super chat system this week. Sorry, guys, didn't work out, mainly because the website I was going to use wasn't operating until about half an hour before we started, so I didn't have time to set it up. Next week, I hope it will do. Go well, people, and never let the bastards grind you down.